Yeah. I started the stream.
Is the microphone around?
Yeah.
I don't see it. Oh, I see it now. Testing, 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 testing,
It may take a second or two to kick in.
testing, testing, testing.
Here. Now try one here.
Testing, testing. There, a little bit there.
Town hall meeting, yep, we're live. Oh yeah, we're live.
Is it streaming?
Yep.
Oh, good.
There.
Hey, Danielle. It's streaming. We got it. All right,
Okay.
thanks. Bye.
Right, well,
Thanks,
I'll let
Leon.
Sue, several people ask me.
Yeah. Could you hear Sam?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, all right. Oh, you can even hear me saying we're live.
Yeah. Hey, Rich.
I just don't want it to get so wet that it has to be redug out. You know, that's my fear. What time? It's six. There's 24, 6 minutes. 6 minutes.
The streaming has started, so
Okay.
if you want to tell a joke or two, feel free.
We'll wait, we'll wait.
RD. How are you, my friend? Been well? You were like this. Yeah. We've been through this before.
Can you tell me what it is exactly?
47 years. Very hard to enforce. She's a president.
There's a lot of space in front.
Real.
I showered.
They're hard from them.
Yeah, Joe Ballard.
Your neighbor, I can't,
Herb told me that he's been here since before there was an incarnation. This is the fourth town hall meeting that we've had here. And we're gonna get a fifth one in November 18th. So, Herb dice, él es un feligrese aquí, de Mensa, de la parroquia. Este es solamente el paso, regidor de la parroquia. Todos. All right. Come on up. The seats are all in front. All the important people got the seats in the back. Okay.
I need, yeah, test.
They need me.
Yeah, audio's good.
They need me to test something for the live stream.
Really good, yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and begin with prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in us the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and you shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. Send forth your Spirit upon us this day, O Lord, and guide our conversation for the sake of your parish. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Padre nuestro, que estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga a nosotros tu reino. Hágase tu voluntad en la tierra como en el cielo. Danos hoy nuestra pan de cada día. Perdona nuestras ofensas, como también nosotros perdonamos a los que nos ofenden. No nos caer en tentación y líbranos del mal. Amén. En el nombre del Padre y del Espíritu Santo. Amén. I'm afraid there's only seats available on the front. There we go. Okay. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Gracias por su presencia hoy. This is what I'm hoping to do tonight. I want to kind of lead you through what's been happening in terms of the planning that's been going on for the last 5 years. How we have addressed some of the needs that have been found out or expressed. And then what you see in front of you is just some ideas. These are not building plans, okay? These are rather, these are so that we do something about some of the things that we're talking about. Also with us today, because he has been on the Finance Council for all but one of the years that I've been here, we have Robert Chisholm here, and sometime later, Don Swafford, who is the architect that has been working on some of these responses. He said he was going to be here at 6, and I told him you didn't have to be here at 6:30, so he probably won't be here till 7. So when I first came here, I asked the Finance Council to do a systems analysis of all of our systems, our roofs, our electricity, our HVAC, our parking lots, and as part of that, we had Jamie Gibson, if y'all know Therese. It's her husband. There's a seat right on front. If you want to move down one, or are you going to say that? Okay. And I apologize, we only had 70 seats in here. So I got all of them out, okay? There's still a couple of seats around here, okay? So, but Jamie did a pretty sophisticated study. He's a civil engineer, and put aging into the study on our HVACs and our roofs. The primary thing that we had to address like right away was our electrical, and we've been addressing some of these things on this list all along. We've had some roof repairs. We've had some we have tons of HVAC repairs, but we've been addressing those things. But on the HVAC, we are past what he said was the aging for our HVAC in the parish hall, and that situation is actually more dire than a lot of people know. We have a double system, and right now only one of the systems is functioning because we use parts from one to fix the other. And it can no longer be fixed because air conditioning systems, you can't, it costs more to give it the old refrigerant than it does to replace it with a new one. And so it's no longer fixable, so we're kind of looking at, we are almost at that situation in the church as well. That we're not quite as bad in the church, but that is part of the situation as well. As part of that assessment too, we also looked at the parking lots, which are not on any of these, but I just wanted to tell you that the parking lots are probably 1 or 2 hard winters away from breaking up and cracking because there's not much of a base under any of our parking lots. And the cracking that you see, the dangerous part of that is water and then freezing, and then the freezing uplifting parts of the parking lot. So that's a problem for a different day, but I just wanted to lay that out for you. As we were also looking at some of the needs of the parish, one of the things is that we had this whole movement pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, okay? And so pre-COVID, when I came here, we had si usted necesita para mí de traducir alguna cosa en español, so por favor, esta parte yo necesito más información en español, okay? Okay. So pre-COVID, when I first came here, we had about 1,200 people attending the 5 masses that we had at that time. Then in the first, until from July until February, we were averaging about 1,400, we had grown about 200. That 200 was because we added the Spanish Mass. All the growth was in that additional Spanish Mass at 7 o'clock. Then COVID hit and we had nobody, then we had 10 people, then we had 150 people, then we grew at all the masses, we had 375, and then it grew to 500, then it grew to 700. These are the plateaus. Then it grew to 800, 900, 1,000, and then it went to 1,200, it went to 1,400, and now we're regularly at 1,600. Okay? As part of that, regularly at 1600, one of the masses that, and there are some seats way up here. I'll move the board. There we go. So the mass that has, not always, sometimes the 9 o'clock can be over 400 and can be like 450. Where our parish becomes uncomfortable is anything approaching 480. 480 is absolutely every seat and every space in between you and another person doesn't exist. Okay, that's 480 in our space. Sometimes we have 530. Sometimes we have 600 at the 130 mass. And so having enough space in the future was one of the things that we needed to look at as well. When we were looking at options to do this, there's Don. Can you just stand up just for a second? Don Swafford is the architect who basically says, I'm retired. I would like to offer my services to you, and basically at not a lot of money. We pay him money, but not a lot of money. He has been able to put a lot of these options in front of us as well. Don has had. Don, could you introduce yourself? Could you come up and just tell people your background and your church background as well? Okay. I think you need to know him. You got to speak loud like that.
Okay, like that?
Yeah.
Everybody here? Okay. Let's see.
You got to hold it like that. Yeah, thank you.
I graduated from UVA in '76. I worked for Milton Gray, who was a outstanding church architect in the United States. Then I started my own firm in '82. And my first project was a church. I specialized in Roman Catholic and Episcopalian churches, Lutheran and Presbyterian churches. Then, probably about 30 or 40 years ago, I decided that I was going more into the mode of historic preservation and classic design. I think you can see this church, you can see the influence of Western things on this looking to Spain, and the third part of that church is Spanish. Really the Spanish church from about 400 or 500 years. So it's very early Christian. On the West Coast, really thought that it would be something that would be really remarkable. But in classical architecture, we always have something that says, right? This is where you come from. So I came to be doing studies in the churches. And so on who they are, Board of Architecture.
That's the Building and Renovation Committee for the diocese.
We'll be dealing with it. So I'm happy to be here with y'all. I've always thought this was a wonderful congregation. There's a great friends of mine who I went to downtown. And it's really an honor to take a look at something like this and figure out how we can reconfigure it to seat 600 people. So, thank you.
One of the things in just developing the plan, first of all, I wanted to ask Robert or David, because he was on the committee when we did it. Is there anything else, or Robert, is there anything else you want to say about the assessment that we've been doing about the building? you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Robert Chisholm. So I've been on the Finance Council for
Going on your fifth year.
5th year-ish. It seems longer. But so one of the things that when Monsignor Keeney came to Incarnation, we wanted to tackle was the facility in and of itself and the structural integrity of the bones and what does that look like. And one of the things that we kept getting peppered with that was impacting the budget was repairs there, HVAC repairs there, constant phone calls, HVAC's failed. But there's other issues as well outside of the HVAC. We did make that determination to tackle all of the kind of failing infrastructure. What is that cascade? And I think one of the things that we'll talk about tonight is how Project A flows into Project B, C, D, E, F, G, and how we have to tackle that as well. But as Monsignor said, the HVAC, we've had issues with the electrical. We've had electrical issues. Roofs. Our roofs have been failing. If for those of you who've been here for a long
Not failing, they just need to be repaired.
but we've had in the office area. There's been a lot of repairs we've had to focus on. The electrical, for those who've been here for a long time, know the building's very old. It used to be a school. We added some additions, so there's been some incompatibility with some of the electrical work that we've had to tackle. So one of the things that we thought that was kind of the trigger point for this is we need to tackle the infrastructure and the skeleton part of it now of the building. Now, while we do that, it's also a time to address capacity issues within the worship space and the overall building, the facade, the exterior, making it more inviting, welcoming, safer in some aspects. I mean, a lot of people here at night, and it's a very dark parking lot, I can tell you, being here some nights. So those were a lot of the decisioning factors that came in when we decided to pull the trigger on is this the right time or not for capital campaign and renovations.
So as we were starting to look at some of these issues, we were saying, okay, how could we address it? That the HVAC was one of the things that was driving it. So Don, we started looking at other options than traditional HVAC and other options rather than traditional electricity. So we looked at 3 different companies to do solar, and they all told us we can't do it on your project. So we tried 3 different times and got the same answer from all 3 companies. Don brought up the possibility of doing geothermal, and you probably can't see it from where you are, but there's this gray dashed area. That's a potential geothermal. I'm not saying that's the direction we're going, but it's something we're at least investigating as whether that's the right thing to do. We need to know that geothermal is going to be exponentially more than doing a traditional system. The other thing is traditional systems are no longer traditional. They've gotten better. They've gotten more energy efficient. And so, that's all part of what we're going to have to decide. Those decisions have not been made, but at least in the plan, there's at least a potential for a geothermal system as well. The other thing we looked at in the church is that it would be more efficient if the air were to come from the floor up rather than from the ceiling down. And I know Chip would like it because that makes it tough on the camera for the live stream, and also it makes a sound when you do it. But in order to do that, part of the reason we were looking at that is we knew that once you begin tackling big numbers in a church, they're going to ask you about things like, well, how are you going to deal with capacity? How many, if you need more capacity, how many more are you going to put in? You also, in terms of the BARC, the Building and Renovation Committee, both building and a church and renovating a church, you need to kind of come in line with what the requirements are for a Catholic church to be built in this diocese, and one of those would be to make sure that there are kneelers available. To do that, it was felt that we needed to flatten the floor rather than the pitch, rather than the steps going on. And so we looked at initially, and I'll use this as initially what we looked at as an option to have a driveway that would take you along this side, put a porte cochere near the back of the church, and build on the rear of the church a commons back here, and try to feed everyone in this direction. So we kept the same orientation of the altar. It still would mean that the roof would have to go up, and there was this kind of half dome shape that was there. And on the committee, I'm sorry Don came up with it, but on the committee everyone says, that's stupid. Nobody's going to want to go to the back of the church to come in as the front of the church. And then Dave Keller, he said, I'm going to not blame you. I'm going to say it was a great idea. He says, why don't we switch it? And it was like on the light bulb went on all the finance councils. And they said, hey, no, that's a great idea. And then Don also came up with that idea, which led him to begin to sketch out this kind of traditional form. What you're looking at, though, is the facade of our church. Our current church is right here. And what you're looking here, it's hard for me to draw it right now, but from this point to this point, that's our current roof slope. What we're talking about is continuing that all the way across. Did you understand what I said, or do I need to say it a different way? Okay, so, Okay, so here's the facade of our building, and the current roof line goes like that, okay? With the, okay. So instead of going down like that, this would come all the way over, and all of this would have the same slope on this side. And then what was added was this, to get more light, to get the clear stories, light here with another pointed roof that again has the same slant as the current roof. That is now not to be confused with the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, but this is a basilica shape. Okay, so it's a very ancient Christian shape. And the other thing, one of the reasons it was chosen is, let me see. So the nave of the church, is here, and nave comes from the Latin ship, and churches were supposed to look like ships. And the altar was supposed to look like the prow of the ship. So that's where some of these forms are coming from. Okay? So with that in mind, then we started looking at, okay, if we end up doing something like this, we're going to need to be out of the church for 9 months to a year. Because we're going to have to take the roof off. if we were going to have mass tonight with the roof off, it would not be a good thing. Okay? And so we're looking at the need to be able to be in both the parish hall and in here, because at some of the masses we would be able to accommodate everyone in the parish hall. But there are some masses like the 9 o'clock and the 1:30, and sometimes even the 11:30, where we would have to have both spaces going on pretty much simultaneously as well to be able to accommodate. Because the worst thing we could do is to say, okay, we're going to shrink as a congregation, y'all go elsewhere and come back in a year. No, that's not going to work, you know. And so in terms of doing that, yes. It may be live stream, it may be 2 masses going on at the same time. And there are ways to do that for a year. It's indentured servitude of a certain retired priest. That's potential. I'm not a big fan of live streaming in 2 different places. I think it's much better for community if we actually have a live mass. But these are things that have to be worked out. That's why you have to do a lot of planning ahead of time to make sure that we can do this, okay? But to make that happen, we have to address the issue of the HVAC in the parish hall. That will require, because of where those units are located, that will require the entire ceiling to be taken down. Because they have to be able to come in there and literally cut up the HVAC that's in there and bring it down. So if that's happening, it would be the right time to address things like lighting, moving away from fluorescents to LEDs. It would be the time to address the fact that our outside wall is without insulation. That closet is like having an open window. And so addressing insulation issues and then making it look less like a prison by possibly covering up the cement block, and that hall and this hall have become an important part of our financial stability as a parish. Both of these spaces are rented out regularly. And in fact, they're rented out so regularly that they represent at least one salary of one of our full-time employees that doesn't have to be covered by the offertory. And so then looking at this space, one of the things to make it more accessible is I looked at a plan to get rid of that storage area right there, add storage on the side, add an area for the Knights of Columbus, and put a partial wall across here that would allow us to have mass in this direction without feeling like you're looking at the bathrooms. And then in the future, it also is a place where you could have a serving line that will have plugs in the wall, and it would also allow in and out of the kitchen better. And then I'd asked to deal with the bathrooms for impact reasons. I want to be able to have a separate door on the shower, and then the separate door. Get rid of this door. The men's room door would actually go further back, and there would be a door into the shower separate, so that you don't have to go in through the men's room to get to the shower if you have women here. So that's one of the things that I looked at that I got some numbers. I don't like the numbers I saw. One of the issues over here is, and part of the expense is getting this roof line to connect with a building over here and making it watertight with all that stone that's on the outside. There is another alternative that was suggested by the builder, but I have not had that priced out yet, which was to put a barn roof on top of this building, because this was originally a barn, and put an elevator and a staircase in here, and put storage, the Knights of Columbus, the Boy Scouts upstairs, and that may even be cheaper than what they were thinking. I don't know. The rest of them I have high, low, middle numbers to show you. That suggestion I don't have any numbers to show you. Also, as part of our discussion on all of this, okay, one of the issues came up, which was, are we, in doing this, what about our investment in housing? And one of the things that I've been working with both the Finance Council and the Parish Council in terms of a suggestion, a lot of parishioners don't know about this, is I've been looking at our parish investing in a community center in Townwood. One of the issues in Townwood, 50% of the people who live in Townwood, if you don't know where it is, it's on Ryle Road, right across from the Stone store. 50% of our parishioners live in that mobile home development. 80% of the people of the residents are actually Hispanic. Among many of those children, I notice when we're doing sacramental prep that they struggle with literacy in 2 languages. And one of the things in terms of the town center that I wanted to do was to have, instead of saying, you all come here, saying as a community, we're going to go where you are and invest in you by doing homework, assistance, and other kinds of classes. There might be a place where the community themselves could do prayer groups. We could work in partnership with UVA Medical, with Dr. Max Luna, who currently do services out on the grass out there, and also with Simbaretas, and as well, who also do things on. So what I'm looking to do, both what I've been researching and looking to do, is to invest, to see if our parish could invest $150,000 to buy a unit and then have it carted off, okay? And by buying the unit, we would then have to pay rent on this space, but then buy a new unit that we could convert into this community center, and that would be about $100,000 to do that well. Long term, I'm also trying to work with Catholic Charities, the diocese, to possibly replicate what Habitat for Humanity did in Southwood. Southwood was purchased by Habitat for Humanity, and then they began to build affordable homes. I'm not saying that we're going to do this on our own, we can't, but in partnership with others, the diocese is at least willing to work with us. Catholic Charities is at least willing to work with us. And although we would certainly reach out for Habitat for Humanity, I wouldn't want that community center to lose its ability to do religious things as well as doing community things. And so I don't want the partnership where it's taken over, so all of a sudden we don't have to do it. But that is one of the things that I'm suggesting that we might want to put into the capital campaign as well. In terms of looking at the capital campaign, we're going to, as I said in my announcements, I'm currently doing a course on liturgical theology. And one of the things I'm doing is, liturgical art and architecture, the purpose of the liturgy. And so if we're going to look at some of why these changes are being proposed, to look at what Vatican II says about how a church should be structured. What does the Living Stones, which is the U.S. document on church building, what does that tell us as well? And to also go even further, which is, what's the essence of liturgy? And what are some of the forms that are supposed to teach us? Because a church building should actually teach the faith. It shouldn't just be, and unfortunately this was a kind of during a brief period from the 70s, you said 70s to the early 90s? You were the one that gave me the years. Mid-80s, which was that the church was merely a skin that we kind of, and to contain the action of the liturgy and the people, and that the history of the church is prior to that and post that is that the church building is actually catechetical about the faith, about what we're doing about as liturgy, as worship, and that's part of the reason that some of these things. I want to just talk quickly about some of the decisions in the church as we, to kind of point out, now this is really hard because you can't see this, but I'm inviting you either to look on the board or up there or to come up afterwards, and we're going to have time for questions, just to kind of talk through what we're talking here. So, a lot of church architecture is based on the temple, okay? And then on synagogue and temple. Synagogue would be the gathering place, temple would be the place of sacrifice. And so, in many churches, there is always a narthex. In some places, that narthex is very small. In some churches that you've been into have been very, very small. One of the outgrowths in Vatican II was the narthex has grown as a place of gathering. It was meant to be a reflection of the court of the Gentiles, of the temple. And then the place for the nave was the place of gathering, the place that would be the place where you would hear the word, but it was also the place that in hearing the word, it would be led to the altar, the Holy of Holies, in the church. In this, one of the ways we are able to accommodate more people is, although the altar is still inside the four walls of the church, we, by adding this apse, gives room for the Blessed Sacrament, for the presider, for the credence table, and the apse is meant to be a place that specifically calls to mind that vertical connection to God, to heaven. That what is happening in the liturgy is connecting us with that spiritual marriage with God. Oh, and it's over there as well.
Still hard to see.
So what you'll notice also is practical. We added 2 bathrooms directly in the narthex to help people, because I'm very concerned about safety, about children going all the way down there, especially young boys, when they're having turned the corner, and all of a sudden no one's seeing them. So having those 2 family restrooms in the narthex, I think, is very important to be able to do. The vesting room would be moved over here so that the priests and the deacons could vest and go right into the procession. Okay, All the other sacristy stuff would stay where it is, okay? The current vesting room could become a place where the servers could vest. It could become a place where brides, we don't have a bride's room because it has a bathroom. It could become a place where brides like bathrooms. I did not want to touch the current font. And so, although we may get some pushback from Mark, because normally they like the baptismal font to be at the door of the church, I think we can make an argument both on the history of the parish, the font is substantial, and that we can still do the rites at the door for baptisms and funerals in that place without moving the font. And so, to balance the font, the music, the choir would go on the other side, and then would be in a position to both lead, but they would not be, like center stage. Also here, you'll see confessionals here and here. And the thing about these confessionals is you'll see that there are doors that you enter from the narthex and doors that you enter from the church. The design of confessionals is changing, and it's for everyone's protection. It's the priest need to have a separate way in and out of the confessional. And so the priest would enter from the narthex side, and to have face-to-face, we'd have those sliders, but it would be the penitent that would slide. And so if you want face-to-face, you move it back, and you're face-to-face with the priest. If you want to be behind the screen, you just leave the screen there, and you can go behind the screen. But this would allow for two priests to be hearing confessions. And sometimes we actually need that. Sometimes on Sunday, particularly, I have to pop into the vesting room because the line is just too long for Father Joseph, so he can get out to the Mass. The idea, let me see. We would still have access to this large storage area, and we're talking to Don about actually extending that arch a bit up so that it reads a little, reads taller as well. On the sides, it would be my intention that our current statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe, great devotion people have to it, but it's made out of plexiglass, fiberglass, and that's really not a worthy material. I would like if we could get a carved and painted statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the same scale, and then work with the parish to decide what's the image of St. Joseph that should be on the other side, to have a St. Joseph on the other side as well. I would anticipate, and this is a discussion for a later time, I would anticipate some sort of church art in the narthex, in the apse that would speak of the Incarnation. Off the top of my head, but again, this is something we can talk about. And I love the phrase for the Incarnation of St. Irenaeus: God became man so that man might become God. And so the images that come to mind for me for that would be the Annunciation and the Nativity, and then relating to above the mystical marriage of God and the church, of Jesus and the church, so that God became man, so that man might become God. So that's an idea, okay? And then probably putting the cross suspended somewhere above the altar. And part of the reason for that is churches are supposed to be facing east, because east is the direction of Christ. west was the direction of the gates of hell. So you're supposed to be moving away from hell and into the east. This is both in the New Testament and in the Old Testament. It talks about that. Our church, unfortunately, is currently faced north by northeast and south by southwest. But in church art and church architecture, the cross, if you can't situate a church facing east, the cross becomes east. And so it would be best if the cross were to be able to be faced by the priest and the people, so that we're both facing east together, even though even though the priest is towards the people, but we're all facing east. We're all facing towards Christ. So these are some of the options. Come on over here. Okay. So this is the parish hall, and this is those spaces that we were talking about here. One of the other issues is the parish office does not currently, our parish was not built when security was a big issue. And what I suggested and what's been designed here is a way to screen people as they come into the building. And so, any of you all know where Sarah sits at the, okay? That's here, okay? Jean's office is here, and there's a corridor here. They would switch. And that window that's here would become something you could communicate through. And there would be a lock off here. So you come in here, you'd be screened here, and then allowed to enter into the building. So we know who's in the building. The idea, too, is that this would be manned at night. And so that this could become a secure entrance at night as well, as during other times. During Sundays, both doors would be open, so you could come on through. Then we would just move a couple of things around in the office to get another office here and the workroom and another small tiny office over here. So that's one thing. Then over here is the bathrooms. Currently, the women's room, you're entering from the corridor in this direction. And this would allow both, you can enter both sides. And although it shows swinging doors, I'm actually in favor of no doors for the bathroom, both for handicap purposes, but also in terms of children being shut in there. And then this would be a reworking. You would be able to get a second handicap space in the women's room. We don't have enough space for another stall, but we have enough space that one of the spaces could become an extra handicap space as well, plus new sinks as well. Okay. That was a lot. I know that was a fire hose. One of the things I want to talk to you about now is cost. Okay. When we're going to be, Finance Council hired Greater Mission to come in and do a financial feasibility study of our parish to see how much we could do. I'll give you what is kind of the rule of thumb. They're going to do something that's much more based in fact, based on what our public information on people's giving capacity is. They're going to be looking at that. They're going to be doing interviews with parishioners. And they're going to give us a number that they think is feasible for us to do as a capital campaign. But the rule of thumb in the church world is that you can do 3 times, a capital campaign can do 3 times your annual giving. Currently, our annual giving, Currently, our annual giving is $1.3 million. So times 3 would be 3.9. Your debt capacity is generally 2 times annual giving. And so our debt capacity would be 2.6. So I'm not saying this is what ours is. I'm just saying this is what the folks, this is what it says we potentially have, which would give us 6.5. We currently have about $180,000 in capital monies that are geared towards the new building. Okay, by January we should be receiving $270,000 for selling some property to Our Lady of Peace. All of that will go into that as well. We have an additional, is it $150,000 that we received from, or no, 100, was it 100? It was about 100,000. We can't touch it for 4 more years, but we received it with the PPP money that we have in savings that we had targeted towards capital improvements as well. It would be my intention to try to do, because this is layered, you know, we have to do some things before we can do the other things. My hope is that we could decide what we wanted to do about the parish hall first, try to cover that in monies that we either have or we know we're going to have soon, and then we could do our fundraising towards other parts of the project that we get to choose what we would want to do. The bathrooms. These, I hired an estimator, okay, to get numbers. He gave me, okay, this is your square footage, this is at $250 a square foot, this is at $300 a square foot, this is at $350 a square foot. At the middle number, and I'll just talk about the middle numbers, the bathrooms would take about $112,000. The office renovation would take about $200,000. The parish hall is $600,000. This building right here. And I don't know why, but this is more expensive, even though we're not replacing the HVAC, and we're replacing the HVAC here. So I don't know. These numbers, I would like, okay, and the parish hall, which the HVAC was 390, and then another 100,000. So basically $500,000 for the parish hall. And then the parish, and then the church, 5.1. As you can see, we can't do all of it, okay? And then 150 for the Townwood project. So part of this is, one, are these the real numbers? Because what I would like to try to do is I would like to try to interview 3 companies to do a design build. And then the design build, although we would have Don as a consulting architect, the actual architects that would do the work would be a sub of that contractor. And the advantage of doing a design build rather than a traditional build, which is you submit the plan to 3 architects. They now do have AIA contracts, and now you go take it out to a builder, is my experience is no offense, but the architects always underestimate how much it's going to cost, and then you have to pay them to redesign the building to get, because you want now to bring it down. Whereas with the design build, they have a contractual relationship with the architect, and they are contractually obligated to design the building to the budget. And so that's my hope to do, and then work with that design build. Okay, do we leave this behind? Do we not do this right now? Do we do different materials? Are there other ways of skinning this cat? Sorry for all the animal lovers out there with that analogy. So that that's kind of the plan going forward. Again, that was a fire hose. Now it's time for questions. Tiempo para preguntas. Sí.
So what would the timeline be like? Would you be doing the capital campaign for 3 years and over the course of 2 years?
What I would hope we would be able to do is that we would be able, over the next 6 months, to be able to get a good handle on what our capital capacity is, and to be able to work out in conversation with people what it is we're actually raising money to do, okay? Then we would begin the capital campaign, which generally takes a year, okay? To be able to put dirt in the ground, shovel into the earth, you have to have 3 things. You have to have a third of the money in hand, you have to have a third of the money pledged, and you can borrow up to a third, okay? And so when we would reach, I would think that would take, my hope is that we would, after that year, we would possibly be able to look at it. So now we're 1.5 years to 2 years out. That's when I anticipate we could possibly begin construction. Realistically, on just the church, 9 months to a year. Year is probably pretty good, but probably with the scope of this, if we did other things, some of those things would start earlier. We have to do something about the parish hall within the next year. In fact, I'm hoping we can do something starting in February of this year with the parish hall, and to be able to move forward with that. So it's going to be a sliding scale, but I think we're looking at a 3 to 4 year process for this. Yes.
Campaign itself would be a year, but how far out do you anticipate taking donations?
I mean, rule of thumb, a lot of people are not comfortable with 3 years, so oftentimes parishes offer 5. Yes. Oh, thank you. A lot of parishes offer 5 years for your pledges, and what we could handle in terms of debt, I'm not counting, you can do interest only on pledges that are coming in. So you can finance the pledges over that time. The problem with a 5-year pledge rather than a 3-year pledge, people move away, people die, and you have to build into your model a certain amount of non-fulfillment of pledges when somebody makes a 5-year pledge. The other thing you can do, and this is I'm losing battery, I guess. The other thing you can do is you can make a testamentary gift, but there's a certain calculation that if somebody who's 80 years old, you diminish that by a certain amount, and then if they're under that, it's even more that you diminish the amount of the gift that you could do. We had a gift of $1.6 million when we did St. Bede, the project there. He was 81 years old, and he's still kicking. and he's a lovely man, and I wouldn't wish anything more for him and his wife. But But that's the kind of, the reason you have to diminish the gift is because you're going to be paying that interest on that pledge being collected for maybe more than just the 5 years. Other questions? Yes.
Environmental impact and what has been done to make sure that what we do is the best for what's happening to our climate with the crisis. You know, we couldn't do solar before. Is there any way of doing solar or other type of climate mitigation?
You know, I mean, we would look at all of those things again. I mean, the technology changes every single year. So we would certainly look at those things that, I mean, even the building materials have changed from when I did the project at St. Bede's. But
What agencies, like nonprofits or local, federal?
that would be, I know that Lee Construction, that would be them. They would be working with those folks. I mean, we are staying within pretty much the four walls of the building. We're really not impacting much. The only thing that could impact more is if we address the parking and add more parking. One of the ideas that I have for the parking would be adding permeable parking pavers in the circle so that it doesn't destroy the use of the circle. People are parking on the circle anyway. But that's another option with permeable pavers. There's another option, might be to carve out a few more spaces over by the garden as well, since the gardeners park over there anyway. Other questions? Yes? So the HVAC for the parish hall, that number came in at $394,000, but that includes the ceiling replacement, the lights as well, the insulation there. So that's not just the HVAC, but then other things in the parish hall would trim and paint and contractors' time and making the stage safe, because it's not safe right now. But all of that together is another $109,000. So again, this is an estimate. We still have to kind of work with them. But safety is, you know, systems falling apart, that's one, okay? Safety is another one, and safety and security are part of this. And then kind of looking at what works best because we are a Catholic church. Okay? It was built into that $6 million number, but I don't have the number that they were looking at. But what I was quoted 2 years ago was $500,000. You know, so yes. Oh, okay, okay. Okay. We would have though, except for Mass like we do now, for the 12:15 where we open it up for Mass and then we lock it again. But during the rest of the day, it would be closed. Also at night, those doors would always be closed, and then you would come in only from the office side, and you have to sign in. So we know exactly. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's just a matter of knowing who's in the building, and having one point of contact. Obviously, when we're having public mass, that's different. We'll open up the both sides.
On the security piece, one of the things that really kind of resonated with us was the safety and security of the parish. And we had multiple agencies. We had a couple, I think it was Allen County Police, and then we had a private company as well that came in to do a facilities assessment just along security and where our vulnerability spots and things like that. So that's where this is coming from, is being able to control. There's not, from the standpoint of us being a Catholic church, we're open, we're welcoming during the mass time, but during the night, when there's a lot of activities going on at the church, just during the day, that those are the times that we can actually try to control the access to the building with people coming in.
And currently, we're paying the security guard to be here between 11:30 and 3:30, or 12:30 and 3:30, something like that. We have a security guard at the end of the 11:30 mass, during the 1:30 mass, and during the food lineup. That was what we could afford right now. It would be in the future. We also know that for Christmas and Easter and for Ash Wednesday, we have to hire security for our parking lots, because we've had cars broken into in each of those cases during those days. And so having security is something that is being talked out at the diocesan level. That's another budget requirement, but that's part of how we're addressing this too. We're trying to do it holistically in terms of security. Yes.
So what I heard is that aside from everything getting old, the big driver here is increased capacity.
That's one of the, yeah.
From 450 to 600.
Yes.
And to me, these design ideas are very traditional. One of the non-traditional aspects of our space is that you can see each other.
Yeah.
With orientation. Is there a way to maintain some of that?
Not with keeping the four walls. If you wanted to expand, basically we would be in a St. Thomas situation where we would have to expand the church or take out 2 of the 4 walls, and that's basically starting from scratch. It's just that in that kind of configuration, you're never going to get to have an adequate. The best you could do here is a fan shape, and that's why there is a slight fan to this, to try to do that as well. But to have a true cruciform church, and that's what you're talking about, is the computational. I mean, that's the traditional form of a cruciform church. But to do that, we would really have to talk about a much bigger square footage increase to the parish. We have the land to do it, but I don't believe that the parish can afford to do it. Myself. Okay. Yes.
From 480 to 600, is it enough?
We think it is for the next 20 years, okay? We think that would give us the breathing room that we would need for the next 20 years, and we're basing on our increases based on what the Census Bureau is telling us that Albemarle County and James City, or not James City. Well, I was in Williamsburg, and Albemarle County and James City County are 2 of the counties in the Commonwealth, in the Diocese of Richmond, that are looking for similar patterns of growth. over the next 20 years. So and the numbers, as I looked at those numbers are about 5 years old. They seem to be tracking according to what those Census Bureaus said, 5 years ago. Yeah.
Have you thought about a crying room or a sound room?
I would like to try to make the commons or the narthex more where you could actually see more of what's going on, and to have it so that there's no longer a delay. So that and if somebody needs a private space, they could go into the confessional as well during that time. But there's in some way when you put up a crying room, you're kind of giving a message that children aren't welcome. I'd like to accommodate parents who want to have that space by having the narthex, both more visible to what's the action of the liturgy, and sound being, contemporaneous, so that the commons would be actually mic'd, so or sound, so that it's what you get in the church is what you're getting in the commons, and to have some screens as well for those. So that would be my preference on it. Well, sure.
You said you got prices for solar. What was the reason they said no, they couldn't do it on that?
They said that they wouldn't make their money back with as much solar as we would. You can.
Yeah, so what we were told, and we had 3 different, and we actually have a nonprofit that works specifically with the diocese, and they've gone from multiple parishes, not just Incarnation, and actually what's the building's name at the diocese? Sean Laser. He was the one who kind of facilitated this company to come in. We looked at the numbers, and basically by the time we paid it off, we would have to go back and replace the components, and then it would outweigh the benefit cost-wise. And honestly, right now, the way that our building just leaks energy, it's a sieve. We also felt why it kind of contradicts one another to put all this money there when the building itself is just leaking energy.
We're trying to do that. Again, the classroom wing, we're not talking about this, but eventually the classroom wing is going to have to be dealt with as well for the same reason. One of the big things in the kitchen is that the classrooms at least have double pane glass. The kitchen window is single pane glass. And so we're still going to be doing some projects over and above the capital campaign, like Giving Tuesday. We're going to continue working on the kitchen and trying to get getting the dishwasher set up this time. That's a big deal. But eventually, we hope that with these, doing every year, doing a little bit more, we can address some things even in the kitchen about those single, replacing all of those windows and putting some insulation in the wall because that's the same issue. The building was built without any insulation, and so when it gets below 30 degrees, it becomes very, very difficult to heat that space. Or when it gets to be 80 degrees, it gets very difficult to cool it. Others? Questions? Yes.
How long do you think the parish hall would be out of commission?
Oh, I think we can do the parish hall in about 3 months. So we'd have to something like that. We would shift over to here being the primary parish hall for 3 months, but I think we would be able to do that. That's why we layer these things. Hopefully there'll be less, and we don't have to do this space. I mean, we could just do Mass ugly for a year. But but this space again and the parish hall are money makers for our parish, and so there's a reason to address them, to get rid of fluorescence, to get, to do something better with the lighting in here. If nothing else, we need to move this mosaic over so it's centered in the door. It drives me crazy. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you can also comment on the example of the windows, how we talked about the heat on the windows, in the parish hall.
In a parish hall, yeah. I mean, as part of what we were talking about, we would both tint those windows, or and also put in shades that would allow us, powered shades that would allow us to do that. We also have another option in there, and it's only for $20,000, but we wanted to talk about it. Yeah, I don't know if any of you remember, there used to be 5 windows on the other side of the parish hall. The side with all the windows? The other side had 5 windows up there. You now, if you look at it, you can't unsee them where they are. But because I'm almost positive they filled them in because glass could not be protected for light. And with tinting and with blackout shades, you could deal with that, but then you could get so much more light into that room, which could actually help on cold days with heating. So, pass it solar. Yes?
As parish, are we still, trying to help civilization and control their church?
Financially, not. We're not doing anything for Crozet. Crozet is handling all of their own bills. What we're doing with it is we're giving part of my time. So basically between Father Joseph and myself, we have a full day of priest time over there. And so Crozet actually pays a 25% of one priest's salary to us. So they cover, so actually they're subsidizing us, the clergy here. And so otherwise all of that would fall on Incarnation. Yeah.
One other question.
Sure. Okay. Sure. There's no bad questions.
Oh, yes. I think a lot of us are feeling sort of overwhelmed tonight and keeping it as much as we can. However, this came on very quickly, and it seems like it's been monthly. For this town meeting, or one, will there be subsequent meetings for input? Are we, as parishioners, just being notified what's going to happen, or if we say we would prefer to have stone floors in the church that'll have radiant, will there be time to?
Yeah, all of that, this is, as I announced before, this is the first meeting. There is another meeting, which is another town hall meeting, to try to take, okay, now hopefully I will hear some feedback from this group, from the others. Then there is the feedback that we're going to get from the people who are going to be interviewed about whether they'll support this. And then we still haven't, I said it's going to be 6 months to decide what we're actually going to do. And then once we decide to do that, then we'll have a building committee that will look, we're not going to have a vote on what carpet squares we're going to have. But we will have a building committee that can take feedback and to do the very things like that, like radiant heat, if we wanted to go in that direction. That certainly we could take some of those up. None of these ideas are just that, ideas. We needed to present something, okay? Something that, that got some of the things that we're going to have to do. How do we get 600 seats in there? How do we get the kneelers in there? How do we get people in and out of the parking lot if that's the case? How do we potentially do these bathrooms? So these, all of these this is beyond not being complete. This is just the beginning of a process. The other thing is, this is not overnight. We've been working on this for 6 years, just to get it to the point where I've been working with parish leadership over time to get input from them and other parishioners as well. But now's the time to go out to the parish. So, I mean, unless we, because you can't simply go out to everybody and say, okay, we're thinking about this, then all of a sudden people panic. What does that mean? And all of a sudden you're building, another basilica of the Immaculate Conception, and I've heard that, by the way. And so that's why we have to come out here, and we had to have something concrete and some concrete numbers that we can work with and react to, and then we decide where we need to go. Okay? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Gains and losses. What I love about what we have now is no matter where you sit, you can see the altar. It's raised. If I had little kids, I wouldn't want to sit far back at all because they wouldn't be able to see. And when you're sitting that way, it's just like when I grew up. And what I love now is the elevation, which we're going to get rid of.
Well, no, there'll still be elevation with the predella. So this area would have the elevation of the predella would be up here, and so you would be able, with both the ambo and the altar, you would still be able to see. Okay, so it's not getting rid of all of the elevation. It's just it would be reducing it. You're correct about that. Yes. 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 Okay. Yes.
You mentioned requirements from the diocese. Can you say
Sure. We can. They're available on the extranet of the diocese, so they're available to everybody. But we can, to make it easier for you, we can probably put them for at least a period of time on our internet. There is a document that building and renovation policies, and I gave that out to the parish council for them to look at. It was a page turner, wasn't it? And Fran wasn't, but it has those, and the section that we would particularly look at, because there are regulations for a new church, and then there's regulations for a renovated church. And so you can read all of it, but because one of the things that they talk about is like a needs assessment, but the needs assessment is like when you're starting from scratch. How many classrooms are you going to need? How many are you going to need a nursery? Are you going to need, how many closets are you going to need? We're not there. That's not what we need to do. We're looking at the renovation. Now, in that, we can do a much smaller needs assessment. One of the things that I made sure, this storage closet started off very small. And every time I go into our storage closet, I say, it needs to be bigger. And that's why it is as big as it is. So, but anything else? Yes.
I'd just like to reiterate what Bonnie was saying, and also has been spoken about one of the big positive things of our church is the way the sanctuary is set up, with the altar not pushed towards the wall in the back, but projected out into the people. And I sit in the choir, and I can see everybody in church, favorite sides of people sitting on the side.
knowing how an architect has the choir set up. The choir might be very well faced in this direction.
Well, we're going to put the people in the back, I'm not going to have the same sidewalk as I do now. So my question is, essentially with the newer part built out in the front, that just extends the rectangle. Why couldn't you just switch it around, have the altar come out to the side, similar to where it is now, figure out where those places would go in different spots, and orient it out?
Well, we did, and that was the plan where we would have had people entered in here to have the center aisle right here. Because one of the things that our church needs to do that is part of that bark thing is to make the altar the center. It needs to be not just, it's the center because that's where the action is, but the aisles lead there. It visually leads there. It is, in fact, the center of the sanctuary. Right now, our altar is off-center. The center is where the Blessed Sacrament is. But the altar itself, the action of the altar, is supposed to be the center of what the church is designed around. In terms of what you were saying, this is still a work in progress. Again, we can react to this, maybe pull it. I've said this to Don, actually, that I thought the altar was too far back and needed to be pulled out a little. Again, these are plans that we're reacting to. This is not the design document that we're building on, okay? So, but yes.
So we might be the only people in the room who followed actually Monsignor Keeney from St. Pete, and I just want to say how much we love that parish and the building we want to be built there. I was wondering if this was the only spot on the property that we had considered, or if there are any other locations to get more flexibility for some of the things that we just talked about.
Well, I mean, if we rebuild, then we're talking magnitude of dollars that is so much bigger than renovation, okay? And so that part of what I was, as I was trying to come up with ideas, one of the things I passed on with says we need to do this in a cost-affordable way, and that was part of the reasoning behind this. Again, one of the things here is this wall right here has all sorts of support structures in it, and so that's why we're not. Somebody asked me about moving that back, but that's what supports the bell tower, and so without taking out that whole wall to do something, that would not really be possible. So we're trying to do that. Again, we could. I mean, there may be able to put a tiny slope in the floor that would still accommodate kneelers. But just not the slope that we have now. So that may be a way of addressing that, of putting a slope that still would accommodate the kneelers, but we would not have stair, like on the two sides where you would have stair. That won't work. Besides, those are not really handicap accessible anyway. But we may be able to accommodate. I've seen churches with kneelers that have a slight slope in them, so that probably could be happening. Yeah, Tom. No.
I'll probably be struck by lightning.
No.
Did you consider not putting in kneelers and keeping the church the same way? And it seems like the kneelers take extra room. Is there a way of expanding the church without kneelers to accommodate more people?
No, they're required by the U.S. Catholic bishops. They're required by the diocese. There was a decision made when this church was being built. They thought the church was going in a different direction. And now what the diocese has said, anytime you do a renovation of a church, they should accommodate what is the position of during the Eucharistic prayer, which is kneeling. And I can mandate kneeling on the floor, but I don't think that that's a good idea.
Well, we've done it for, how long have we done?
I understand that we've been grandfathered in that. But once you cross that line, the diocese will say, now you need to do kneelers, because we're Catholic. And so we should be doing the same posture that they're doing throughout the country.
Right, but the Catholic Church has changed. I mean, Vatican.
Not on that. It's actually those individual churches that chose to stand have been asked to kneel. And it's been restored in almost every parish in the diocese. We're one of the very few that still have standing. Yeah.
I just wanted to break.
No, I understand, because it needed to be said. But I mean, it's not, it's not something I came here to do. But once we cross that line that we're doing something here, it's something that we just it's required of us, and there's a value to it. The other thing is, I want to just say one other thing. Por la comunidad hispana es todas sus personas, de reunirse durante la Eucaristía, ¿sí? So if we took a vote of the congregation, it would be about 75% for kneeling, because half of our parishioners are Spanish. And I would say it would be almost unanimous with the Spanish wanting kneelers, and about half of our Anglos, because I get that all the time. So it's not a majority position even of our parishioners. Okay?
Here in our last parish, we had, that was a huge topic of discussion, where we had some people that were kneeling, and some people that were standing, and it was like a mishmash.
Yeah. And the church does allow an exception. It says if age or physical condition does not permit you to kneel, you may stand. But if you stand during the Eucharistic prayer, you should be bowing profoundly and so that is allowed. That's in the general instruction of the Catholic Church for that thing. What's not permitted is sitting. Except somebody in a wheelchair. I mean, obviously.
I mean, it was because you have those that are kneeling, and you have someone in front of you that's standing.
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah. No, I mean.
It was a hot topic.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't want to be more Catholic than the church. And so the church says that kneeling is the posture in the general instruction on the Roman Missal. And the American bishops extended, the general instruction says, from the epiclesis to the mystery of faith. And that's when the deacons kneel, okay? The American bishops extended kneeling from the Holy Holy to the Great Amen because of the lack of belief in the Eucharist. It was only 33% of Catholics believe what the Church believes about the Eucharist. And there is a connection, because we're human beings, we worship with our whole bodies, we don't worship with our souls. We worship with our complete humanity, so our external and our internal should be matched up. And that's why the bishops have asked that the common posture for everyone, but even still, the general instruction allows those exceptions for people who physically can't do that. And we would allow those exceptions as well.
But it's acceptable, like, even though there's kneelers, I mean, people have a choice to stand up.
Right now, I don't insist on a common posture, because if I correct the people who are kneeling, I'm correcting them from doing the posture that the church is actually asking. And that doesn't make any sense to me. And at the same time, I'm not ready to say we have a common posture of kneeling, because there are some people for whom kneeling really would be impossible without the kneelers. And so that's kind of where I'm at as a pastor, or why I kind of lived with the in-between right now. But at the same time, as we go forward, that's not an option. We're going to be asked to put those in. Okay. Yeah. Tom.
I was going to say, with respect to what people see or can't see, the design suggested, because of the forward orientation and because of the roof and clear story, it creates an optical illusion. The internal space is exactly the same size as it is now. If you're standing in the choir now, you will see the back wall just the same as you see it now. It's not. This makes it look like it's been elongated. In the choir back, the internal space is exactly the same size. It's simply being used. So that's just worth
In churches, 600 people is about when you start losing contact. In other words, the presider or whoever's presiding, at about 600 people, you start to get about 80 to 100 people away from the presider and you lose contact. In other words, there's people in the
So 600 is where you don't want to go beyond 600.
If you've got a dynamic speaker with a dynamic program like you see on TV, faith dealer, for instance, or that would be not great. But yes, so 600 is pretty much the communication line. I wanted to address one other question about sustainability, if it's okay. Most classical buildings that I've done are sustainable. I don't use modern materials that off-gas. We're very conscious of using products that do things like that. And somebody mentioned radiant flooring. The problem with radiant flooring, it's not like it's nothing like it like in one floor, walking into a building that's cold outside. The problem with radiant heating is the way it's produced is by water going through the floor. And generally you don't flow it fast, you do it slow, and you keep the temperature at about 90 degrees. And the lag between the overall temperature of the room and the floor can sometimes be pretty disastrous. So if you start out in a room with 50 people, by the time you get 600 in there, 600 people are bringing a tremendous load into the building. That's when the air conditioners come to turn on. And the winter. So those are just some of the thought processes that we go through in this. And sustainability, I can't think of any material that we can use on this building. The way I like to think about it is a small carbon footprint. I'm not into big carbon footprints. I'm also into embodied energy of existing buildings. And as Monsignor said, that one wall where the bell tower is, I think that goes all the way to the center of the earth. not for any religious purposes, because that's what it's taken to carry on the weight and vibration. So there's sustainability and embodied energy in the existing buildings that we're trying to save as much as we can. And Monsignor did the sketch here like this, and the beam that goes from here down to here, now we're going to take it and reuse it and put it and move it back up again. So we'll even recycle materials that are in the present building. The other thing, I think it's copper.
Yes.
Yeah, so we may even be trying to salvage pieces of that copper just to answer up, because sustainability and those kinds of things are good processes that I follow. Anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah. Great.
Can you tell us about the possible geothermal?
Yeah.
What that is and how it might work?
Well, geothermal is an early term for drilling wells, pumping water up, using the same black magic that heat pumps use to compress gas. You know, remember Bernoulli's principle, you probably done in business classes. The expanding gas gives off heat, compression gas squirts heat. That's how heat pumps work. And what we're doing is rather than doing that with the air outside, which in the wintertime could be -10. In the summertime, it could be 110. And so what happens is rather than using those two huge variables of temperature and the outside air, we use a consistent variable, a consistent material that's water that's pumped out of the ground. And when we originally did these geothermal heat pumps, we would pump the water out of the ground and use it. We found out it was much more efficient to recycle the water down into the ground enough. But the water still picked up temperature down below, and by the time it gets back up, it's in the range of 40 to 50 degrees. And heat pumps work a whole heck of a lot more efficiently when they're working with those kinds of temperature differences. Now, I'm the one that's the big advocate for geothermal. I put in thousands of tons of geothermal systems in churches, office buildings, county courthouses. And I'm just amazed at how people come back to me and say, we just can't believe we got rid of all of the fossil fuels, which is carbon footprint. We got rid of all the fossil fuels. You want to call it a fossil fuel, I'm petroleum. It's all gone, and the only thing we're using is electricity. Now, true, electricity is produced by fossil fuels, but not near to the quantity it is when you burn it in your own heaters. So that's basically what we're doing. We're running a basic heating, air conditioning like you see in a heat pump, but we're using water that's being tempered down in the ground, goes down, goes back up. And for this building is here, meaning for the main building, we may have to drill 30, 40 wells to do that. Because we keep circulating the water down into the ground, the temperature at about 50 degrees. The biggest one I've ever done is over the Presbyterian Church in Waynesboro, in Springs, 27 wells, no more gas, no more oil, cut out their electricity bills, and they paid for their geothermal system in about 5 years. We were projecting. So, and because the cost of fossil petroleum is going up, the payback used to be 10 years, but now it's 4 or 5 years. Yeah, now your solar it is because it's basically taking the earth temperature, which is heated by the sun, and reheating the water with that. When we started talking about putting solar photovoltaic panels, we were only dealing with about probably 1/4 of the church group, because we were dealing with this triangle right here. But I'm not sure now that we won't be able to put back more solar panels, put them on top of the parish hall, put them everywhere we can, and use that to at least generate. I know on our farm south now we have a solar panel array that does all of the electricity for our farm operation. And it's amazing. It's like I call it like magic.
I mean, we're going to continue to look at those sources, and again, as I said before, just because you got 3 no's doesn't mean you don't go back a couple years later and ask.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to hear about what the alternatives are.
But
Will we be able to get rid of the natural gas that we're using
Yeah.
now, like in the kitchen?
that's right. Oh, no. In your kitchen, you're still, unless you want to go to the firewood.
Not for a commercial stove.
No, you gotta use gas.
Solar, not on the building, but put it in.
Yeah, all over the ground, everywhere in the room. I mean, over the market.
Because I do think wasn't there an issue too about the integrity of the roofs that put the whole around.
That was part of the issue, was the integrity of the roof. Doesn't mean that we can't continue to look at it. I just don't want to make any promises, because we've had 3 no's, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to look at it as we go forward.
And we're also looking at the different kinds of people there. Remember, when we first, Monsignor first brought me in here, we were trying to really turn the church back around and have people coming from the other side. It was painful. Somebody on the parish council or finance council said, shucks, why don't we just go out into the parking lot? They said, it makes sense. I said, that's what I've been thinking all along. Thank you.
This whole house, folks.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's this whole house. It's HGTV. We only have so much money. We only have so much time. So which projects do we pick? And I'm a reformed finance council person from the parish here. I've offered a lot. It's the same thing we talked about. My 3 years on parish council. I've been on a couple of years. So.
Other questions?
Fire marshal says our sanctuary can already hold
660.
Right.
That's right. So we'll now have seats for 600 when our capacity says 660. That's based on purely a square footage projection. That's not based on actual seats in the sanctuary.
Standing room.
Yeah. It means that when we have standing room only, they're not going to call the cops on us. So hay un momento. Hay algunos momentos de la comunidad hispana que ustedes muy hay mucho silencio con la comunidad en este momento. So, hay algunos momentos o preguntas. Did you want to say something? You're okay?
Could be brought, a time and effort all at once cost effectively. Do we have a list of items like HVAC or roof that's about to hold them?
We're going to have to do the church, and we're going to have to do the parish hall that is done. That means that we don't necessarily have to do the Narthans. We could save that for later. But you lose a lot when you lose that Narthans. You lose the bathrooms, that place for the mothers and fathers with children. Then you'd have to come outside for processions. So you lose a lot. But that's one of the options that could be made. But we're going to have. We don't really have an option. We're going to have to do something about the church, which will include renovations to the church. What those renovations are, we can still discuss, go forward, but we don't have to do this hall at all, or we could do some modified version of it to help bring the cost down. We don't have to do the bathrooms, although I want to say a plug for doing the bathrooms. Is we have sociological studies that people choose their church based on how good the bathrooms are. It is true. It is true. We may not like the fact that people do that, but people do it. Okay? And then the safety issue here with the reception. We can limp along, but I don't like that that's going to long. I want to speak one more word. I really would like to be able to do this. This is the proposal for the Townwood project. It's written out. I don't have a nice picture of anything. I just have a very long memo, which you could read. I mean, I really would like to do that, but it's really going to be, we don't have to do that, okay? We could bring it down, but the question is, if you don't do it now, you have to realize that we can't do it for 10 to 15 years, okay? Because we're going to be going into a capital campaign. You cannot run another capital campaign in a parish under 10 to 15 years, okay? So it's a question of what we're going to do now and what we want to get done, what we really want to have done for the next 10 to 15 years. And so that's needs to be part of our discussion too. Okay? Yes? Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to give the grand total because I don't trust all of those numbers. I mean, those are not those are estimate numbers that I got. But I know we can't do all of it. But you know, if I had to guess, it's probably about 7. So ballpark. Well, not 8. I think it's more closer to the 7. But I think, you know, that's not outside the realm of possibility, but it's still a number I may not be comfortable with. And we don't know whether we're capable of doing it yet. That's still another piece that has to be put in, is the financial capacity assessment, which is going to be happening. Yes.
Yeah, Monsignor, on the chat, Juan Rodriguez has a question.
Sure.
The question is about the security in the parking lot during the evening weekdays and not just on big masses.
Yeah. No, evening weekdays, and Juan is one of the ones who's had his car broken into. You know, we have the cameras up right now. I mean, it's cost prohibitive to have you know, police in our parking lot every single night. I mean, one of the things that somebody is dialed in to our Spanish community, because it's our Spanish community that's being victimized. Oh, to everybody? 10 years ago? Okay. Well, it's happening, but okay, but recently, very recently, it's been, and it seems like it's all the events that we have with the Hispanic community that people are getting targeted. And so, I mean, we're going to continue to try to figure it out, but I don't know what the answer is right now. Okay. Yeah, better light in the parking lot would be one of the things. You know, so yeah, better lighting would be one of the things that I would think we could do in the future.
We are going to put up some more cameras, maybe on the light poles.
Yes.
And that may be a deterrent.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there are still some more things we can do. Yeah, John?
Monsieur, when is an appropriate time to share these documents online so you can take
From now. Okay, so I wanted to make this as, because now I can tell people, you know, look at these documents, but then look at this chat, because now we've had a chance to talk about it. If you just read these documents in isolation with no context, that's why I didn't put them out before the meeting. But now we certainly can put them out and have people look at it, and because we want people to comment and discuss.
What's the best way to comment?
I think what we'll end up doing is probably put on some sort of maybe Google Doc or something like that. It will be monitored so that if somebody goes off the rails, we'll you know, yeah, and so you know. Well, no, you give them to me, and I share them with the Finance Council and the Parish Council. The Parish Council, just so you know, is not representative. They're not your council. They're my council. And so, but you give them to me, and then I share the documents with them. Okay? Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I would prefer it in writing. It's just not that I don't want to talk with you, but it's just, I think it's more, it's easier for me than to share with other people. Yes.
We might put it out on Thursday.
Yeah, well, the next town hall meeting, we'll have, the 18th of November, Tony Wadowski will be here from Greater Mission, and that will be part of what he's going to be talking to us about. Okay? Gracias. En el nombre del Padre, y del Hijo, y del Espíritu Santo. Amén. Thank you all.
I'll pass this on to my
So